Let's do a quick experiment. Imagine you're walking down the road and suddenly you see a man in a banana suit on the ground. No explanations, just a banana on the pavement groaning. So, what do? Do you rush over to help? Do you assume it's a prank and search for cameras hidden in the bushes? Or do you do what most of us would? Pull out your phone because this is definitely something the internet needs to see. Now, while we're all thinking about that, let's replace our banana man, for lack of a better term, with, say, a normal person. Someone who looks like they actually need some help. Maybe someone who just collapsed right in front of you. Surely now we'd step in, right? Well, maybe not. In fact, research suggests that in most public emergencies, people hesitate. Not because they don't care, but because their brains convince them that someone else will take care of it. And this phenomenon isn't just limited to minor interactions on the streets involving you and a banana. It scales. It explains why thousands of people can witness an accident, yet no one calls for help. It explains why bullying happens in schools while an entire classroom looks on. It explains why global humanitarian crises unfold in broad daylight while entire governments, institutions, and populations wait for someone else to move first. In fact, I bet that if you think of some of the biggest problems that you face today, well, they may have been caused by bad decisions, but the reason they persist today is because most people make no decisions at all. Now, to better understand this effect, we have to go back to the 1960s. Bit of a history lesson, I know, but I'll keep it short. Psychologists were really interested in this phenomenon and wanted to understand why in emergencies, crowds tended to do, well, nothing. So they ran an experiment in 1968. Participants would be put in a room, each with an intercom, and sometime during the session, an actor on the other side would pretend to have a seizure. Now, they ran this experiment in two different scenarios. The first, the participants were alone. The second, they were in groups of 4 or 5 people. In which scenario do you think that actor received more help? Well, personally, when I came across this question, I thought the answer was obvious. It's the second one, right? Because surely more people must translate to more help. Well, I was wrong. In fact, in the first scenario, 85% of people rush to help. But in the second, in just a group of 4, that number plummets to 31%. In fact, the more people present, the less likely that anyone took action at all. Now, fast forward a few months later, and they run a different test. One that has become famous as a smoke-filled room experiment. Participants were invited to take up a survey, and while they were filling it out, smoke started filling the room they were in. Now, alone, 78% of them got up and reported it. Because quite frankly, that's concerning. But placed in a group of strangers who had been secretly instructed to ignore it, well, only 35% reacted similarly. There was nothing different about any of these people. They too saw the smoke, felt the sting of it in their eyes, yet because no one else was reacting, well, they thought maybe they were just overreacting. This is what we now call the bystander effect. And you all might be wondering, why? Why does this effect happen? Why don't we help people? And the reason is quite simple. It's because we all, in some way, shape or form, tell ourselves the same 3 lies. First, someone else will take care of it. I mean, it's not my problem. Why should I think about it? Second, well, maybe I'm just overreacting. Maybe it's not a big deal at all. And lastly, I don't embarrass myself. And so we wait, and we wait, and we keep on waiting, while to no one's surprise, nothing happens at all. Take climate change. I'm sure all of you heard quite a lot about it, and we will be hearing quite a lot more today. Everyone agrees it's urgent. Everyone agrees something needs to be done about it. Yet everyone looks to someone else, whether it be governments or institutions or corporations or scientists, for help. We recycle a plastic bottle and tell ourselves, well, at least I did something, while waiting for real change to come from elsewhere. Take social injustice. History has shown us that millions of people have witnessed oppression yet stayed silent. Not because they supported it, but because they didn't know whether it was their place to speak up. Now, there's this really beautiful poem that I feel like most of us would have come across, but probably not paid attention to, possibly because it's printed in our history textbooks. It's called First They Came by Pastor Martin Miller. The last line goes something like this. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak up because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak up for me. It's a haunting reminder that the most brutal tragedies don't only occur due to the actions of a few, but also due to the silence of the many. And every single time that we wait for that someone else, we risk becoming part of the silence. Now, I know this all seems a bit depressing, but here's the good news. Action is contagious too. If hesitation can be contagious in a crowd, then why can't action? Let me give you the example of Wesley Autry, a normal construction worker living in New York. On one ordinary night in 2007, he was on his way home from work, waiting for the subway. When suddenly, a man next to him just collapses onto the tracks. Instantly, a crowd gathers. People watched, yet no one moved. But Wesley, he jumped onto the tracks, pulled the man into a gap, and shielded him as the train passed over them. And the second he acted, others followed. And that is what research shows time and time again. Once one person acts, others follow. So now the real question is, how do we make sure that that person is us? Well, the first step would be to notice the excuse. And trust me, we all make excuses. We think maybe someone else will take care of it. Maybe I'll just make things worse. Maybe they don't need my help. But I want you to think back to the last time you saw something wrong. A situation in which you could have stepped up but hesitated. If you had acted, would it have made things worse? Probably not, right? In fact, the vast majority of time, people appreciate help. And if they don't need it, you move on. Because the cost of inaction is much greater than the cost of a single awkward moment. How many times have we scrolled past a post about someone in need? How many times have we said we'll message him later just to forget? The bystander effect isn't just about life or death situations. It's about the everyday choices that shape the very kind of person that we are. Now, when I say courage, I'm sure all of you are thinking of something dramatic. Running into a burning building to save a puppy or standing up to a corrupt government. But in reality, courage isn't about being fearless. It's simply being able to act despite it. Psychologists call this moral courage, the ability to do what's right even in the face of risk, discomfort, or opposition. And studies show that moral courage isn't something you or I are born with. It's something that is built. One fascinating study shows that the kind of people that tend to step up in tough situations share 3 traits. First, they were more likely to see themselves as responsible. Second, they focused on the consequence of their inaction. And lastly, they practiced making small, courageous choices in their everyday lives. In other words, courage isn't a personality trait, it's a habit. Think of some of the people who have changed the course of history. Not just the famous ones, but the ones whose names we'll never know. The people who hid refugees in their homes during war, the whistleblowers who risked their careers to expose corruption, the strangers who stepped up when someone was in danger. They weren't fearless. They were just willing. That willingness doesn't just come from nowhere. It's built through small moments, small choices over and over again. So if you want to be the kind of person that steps up when it truly matters, don't wait for the big moment. Start now. Build the habit. Make the choice to act in the small moments. And when the big moments come, you won't hesitate. Now, I know what many of you are thinking. Well, that sounds exhausting. I can't step up every single time I see something wrong with the world. That's true. We can't fight every battle and we can't solve every problem. But the goal here isn't to do any of that. The goal here is simply to do something. Because we don't need a world where a few people do everything. We need a world where everyone does something. Think of it like this. One person cannot carry the weight of the world on their shoulders, but all of us can carry just a little bit of it, right? That is the power of collective action. And today, this choice, whether to act or stay silent, matters more than ever. We live in an era where problems don't just exist in front of us. They exist on a global scale. Climate change, wars, political corruption, issues so massive that it's easy to feel powerless to do anything about them. And when we feel powerless, we ask ourselves one very dangerous question. What can one person really do? Lucky for us, history has answered that yet again. Picture this, 1968, the height of the Cold War, the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis, tensions at an all-time high between the US and the Soviet Union. Off the coast of Cuba, a US ship drops depth charges. A nearby Soviet submarine believes it's under attack. The captain authorizes a nuclear strike. But Vasily Arkhipov, another senior officer on board, refuses. And that single decision by that single person prevented a potential global thermonuclear war and saved the lives of more people than we could ever imagine. There are countless more examples of this. When Greta Thunberg skipped school to protest climate inaction, she sparked a global movement. And when Jirao Payeng, a man from Assam, started planting trees alone in a barren wasteland 4 decades ago, no one expected it to become a 1,300-acre forest. These weren't grand orchestrated revolutions. These were ordinary people making single choices that inspired others to act. And that is how change happens, through a ripple effect that turns hesitation into momentum. The world doesn't need you to wait for the perfect moment. It needs you to act now, in the small spaces between the big moments. The moment you speak up, the moment you step up, the moment you decide you will not walk past something that needs fixing. Those are the moments that matter. And each of us stepping into the discomfort, facing the fear of standing alone, it all adds up. The cracks in the world don't stay that way when we start filling them. The brokenness becomes wholeness. The silence becomes voices raised in purpose, unity, and action. So the next time you hesitate, ask yourself this one question. If not me, then who? If not now, then when? Because the world isn't changed by the people who watch from the sidelines. It's changed by the people who take center stage, to act, to take responsibility. And here's the most powerful part. Every single time you step forward, no matter how small, you make it easier for someone else to do the same. It starts a chain reaction that grows beyond us, changing the world in ways that we may never fully see, but will always be able to feel. So let's stop waiting. The world isn't fixed by the people who almost helped. It's fixed by those of us who decide to act first, by those of us who look at the world's needs and go, I'm going to do something about that. It starts with you. It starts now. Thank you.